Hello, and welcome to another episode of the Empower Hour show for changemakers. And I am here with my good friend, Julie Cole from Mabel's Labels. And today we are going to be talking about balancing motherhood and multi-million-dollar success. And Julie's going to be sharing lessons on her entrepreneurial journey. So, you started your business in a basement, and it ended up being acquired, multi-million-dollar acquisition. And you are a mom of six, a recovering lawyer, and you have mastered the art of balancing family life and business growth. So, today we're going to dive into the challenges that you faced in building your company and the experience in selling a business for $12 million dollars, and the passion for continuing to support women entrepreneurs. So, we're going to talk about the importance of mentorship, social justice, and the role that you play as a public speaker and media personality. So, Julie, welcome. Why don't you start by just telling us a little bit about yourself?
Yeah, Lee. Well, I don't know that I've mastered the whole thing, but I definitely have some tips, and I haven't lost my mind entirely just yet. So, hoping I can share a few words of wisdom that might help other people who have a lot on their plate, right? So, as you mentioned, Lee, thanks again also for having me. This is really fun, and I mean, we were doing stuff back like I said, I'm having a bit of an OG week because I met with
Mhm.
Allison Stratton yesterday. And like, I mean, Mabel's Label started 21 years ago. And I mean, you were doing your events many, many years ago. So I feel like we first connected, oh gosh, a lifetime
15,
ago. Yeah.
15 years ago.
Back when we
15.
had babies. Yeah. 15 years ago.
Yes.
Yeah. And my youngest is 15. So, yeah, those were busy times. So yes, started Mabel's Labels 21 years ago with three other co-founders who actually are one's my sister, and then the two were friends of ours from university, and weirdly ended up marrying my brother and my young uncle. So it was also sort of a family business too. So you joked about I joke about being a recovered lawyer. So I had attended law school and just started practicing, and then we started Mabel's Label. So that was a very short-lived career. Although the skills that I learned, have been helpful. Also helpful when negotiating with six small humans. But I'll tell you, why don't I start just by telling you kind of why Mabel's Label started, and that was because it was for two reasons really. The first was that there was a product missing from the market. We were young moms and we were losing stuff. We were using, masking marker on our there that's personal sure and the microwave and all that jazz, and there really wasn't anything readily available, so we created it. So that was one of the reasons why. And then the second reason why, particularly for me, was that at the time, my eldest child, who just turned 3, was diagnosed with autism. And for me, I just didn't think the traditional workforce was going to suit my family life anymore. And honestly, like Mac had just turned 3 and he already had 2 younger siblings. So it was a busy household anyway.
Mhm.
So at that time, I thought, I kind of want to do, the entrepreneurship life should provide me with a little more flexibility than the traditional workforce, which will help align with my values around, being able to advocate for my son and start therapy programs and get him to all the things while also raising his bazillion siblings. So that was when we started Mabel's Labels. And yeah, so that was 21 years ago, and that kid's now 24. So time, it does a fly,
Oh, yeah, it's
right?
incredible. It's incredible how our journeys feel like in the moment they feel like the days last forever, but the years they go so fast,
It
right?
really is so true, and I can see how, like, now I've become that woman at that point in my life where I really stop myself when I see a mom with young babies and, she looks like I wanna say, "Just enjoy it because it's gonna go so fast," but I know for her, she's like, "Bullshit. This day is lasting forever." So, you can't hear it when you're in it, but when the time does go past, you've got the wisdom of being like, wow, it does. But you know what? At the time, it was busy. And I can remember, rather people would say go one day at a time. And for me, it was even 20-minute chunks. Like in 20 minutes, this one's not going to be hungry. This one's not going to be drinking bleach under the sink or whatever. In 20 minutes, I'll be done this call and I can, feed the humans. So to me, even like that, taking it one day at a time was a bit overwhelming when there was so much going on. So I took days in 20-minute chunks. So if you had told me at that time it'll go very fast, I probably would not have believed you.
Yeah, I can remember in the first couple of years of the business, had both of the kids at home with me full time. They were 4 and a baby. And I remember one time talking to a high level prospective sponsor on the phone, and I had to go into the boiler room and hide, right? My kids were screaming. There was stuff going on. It was literally going to be like a very quick phone call. But
Yeah.
yeah, it just had to escape, have a moment of quiet to be able to manage that, and then like race back and, continue on with juggling 101 things. And I know that you can definitely relate to that. So,
Yeah.
so I guess we kind of talked about,
I did the ones who like, the Today Show. Uh-oh, I think we're chopping a bit there. Okay, I don't know if you
yeah,
got me, but I was saying I can relate because once I had like the Today Show or somebody on the line, a producer, and there was so much chaos that I just ran upstairs into my dark closet and shut it for a minute just so I could have that minute peace. But we're trying to almost hide our lifestyles. And I feel like when COVID, that families and working parents really have to struggle and juggle and manage it all. And, I remember when COVID first started and we couldn't get our highlights and we would say, oh, my roots are showing, my roots are showing. And it felt very much like that kind of analogy applied everywhere. My roots are showing, my dog's barking, my kids are hollering, my Wi-Fi's cut out, I'm homeschooling, I'm doing all these things. But because we were all in the same spot, it became so much more acceptable. Whereas I feel like back in our daily, we were so busy trying to be like, no, we're being professionals, but we're also trying to manage all of this too. So I feel like, there's been some progress there, which I think working moms can really appreciate.
yeah, and in that multitasking aspect of life, like I learned after a couple of years of doing that I did end up putting my youngest into childcare part-time when my oldest was already in school full days, and it just made all the difference because you can't, it's not fair to anyone if you really aren't fully present in any of the areas that you're trying to do a good job in, right? And so I think that over time I learned that I needed to give myself the grace of balancing, being fully present in both areas of my life as much as I could. But that was, lessons to learn. And of course, you want to be bringing in some income before you do that. But that's the balance that you're trying to figure out. Like, when can you invest more? Like, when's it worth the risk?
It's so true. And I think that was one of the lessons that I learned a little late, which was get the help.
Yeah.
With business and with home, like it's that whole sometimes you have to spend money to make money. Like if you pay for daycare, then your business, you're going to be in a better position for your business to take money. Just like, if I invest in the more expensive equipment, then my labels are going to do what I need them to do for me to sell more. So
Mhm.
it is hard to wrap your head around that. And I also was a little slow to the game on that one, Lee, because I got a nanny when my fifth kid turned one, and that was literally three kids too late. And I think I just got sucked into that mentality as well of, well, I'm home so that I can start my company and be with my kids. So why would I get help with my kids if this is the point? And it's just not, it just doesn't make sense. And I don't know why we do that. And I think women have to be better at reaching out for help and accepting help. And I can tell you now, I am
Mm.
a master at that.
Ah, good for you. And you do so much to help other women in the small business community to like share your lessons learned. And you were an early mentor of mine. I remember reaching out to you and being so nervous to ask you to be a guest speaker at one of our events at the Kingsway Theater. It was one of our earlier ones. We rented out the Kingsway Theater, which was a pretty big deal for me at the time, right? To rent out a theater. But you were just, like I said prior to getting on the call with you, you were just so chill and fun and funny.
Yeah, well,
So it
you do have a little, yeah, you go I do have to say, like, if you're gonna go and, like, start a business and have 6 kids, you are required to have a certain level of chill, right? Like, it's just when people are like, "Well, how do you do it?" I'm like, "Well, I don't get my knickers in a knot about a whole lot, honestly, because
yeah.
if you did, then and there's no right and there's no wrong, and I'm not a better person because 'cause I'm more chill. It's just a personality trait, right?
Mhm,
So, that's I
mhm.
you have to know and recognize yourself and do what works for you, and there's not one right way.
Yeah, that is so true. So your company let's just sort of go from where you are now, and then we'll kind of go back in time. So most entrepreneurs, if they're doing it right, they are always thinking about what their exit strategy is. And so did you always have that in mind, that you were going to sell the company, or how did that all come to be?
Right. Okay. So I would advise that anybody who has a company, you should be thinking about your exit plan because it's actually going to impact how you run your company. Like, is it going to be a legacy business that you leave to your children, or is it going to be, are you going to look for an acquisition later? Because that's going to dictate about how your operations work and how you manage it and who you bring on and training. Like, there's a lot of things that are impacted. Now, having said that, I don't think we put a whole lot of thought into it at the time that we exited, but I will say this. I think we thought eventually we would sell, but when we did sell, we weren't thinking about it at that time.
Mhm,
However, sometimes the stars align, and how it worked for us was that we were 14 years into the business. We were still running it as like co CEOs. So, 4 of us running it. And that gets a little messy. There's like, you get a little bit defending your almost like siloing, like, everybody's worrying about their departments, and it's hard to have that overall. And so at that point, we're like, well, maybe one person should be the CEO, or maybe we should bring in somebody from the outside, or maybe, we're thinking, what are we going to do? We got to do something.
mhm,
And then out of the blue, we did get a call from Avery Labels, which makes
mm,
sense. It was owned by CCL. And they were like, hey, look, we've been keeping an eye on you guys. We love what you're doing. We love your brand. Can we have a conversation? So we're like, sure, you can have a conversation. Why not? Let's go out for dinner. So we did. And the conversation, that was in July. So the conversation started happening. And there was nothing that we didn't really like that we heard. And we actually closed the deal at the end of December, which is most unusual. It's very fast because there's a lot that has to happen. You have to go through due diligence. And there are so many companies that get left at the altar. Like, do not say you're in negotiations or you're selling your company until the money's in the bank, because
mhm,
you just don't know. And so, there were a few reasons why it worked for us. One was that we loved that they were holding on to the Mabel brand. They weren't going to come in and turn it to Avery. It's still Mabel's. We're still in our same headquarters. We're still, Dame and Vibe. And that's because they're smart. Like, what we had created was an incredible, loved. They knew better than to come in and ruin that. So we loved that. And then, of course, and this is very important if you're selling your company, you want to make sure the price is right, particularly if you have co-founders, because you're
Right.
splitting the money. So you don't, if you are selling your company, you're going to want to make sure that you have a strong EBITDA at that time. And so for us, because we weren't planning on selling, we had a big investment year. So we had, spent $100,000 on a new website. We had done all this building stuff so that we would reap the benefits a couple of years later, right? So because of that, our EBITDA wasn't
Mhm.
great, which means, and usually like you get like EBITDA times 5 for the price of your company. Came back and initially offered us, we were like, hold on a second, you to buy, we've got a lower EBITDA than normal because you're going to be reaping the benefits 2 years later. And they totally understood that. And then so
Mhm.
came back with the number that we wanted. So I would say if you're preparing for a sale, that you're really looking strong in that bottom line. I'll just say on this topic. So I'm just going to say a couple of other things too, if I can. If you are thinking about selling, and you're starting negotiations, make sure that you get somebody to do those negotiations for you, because and for me it was part of the deal
Mm.
was that I had to stay on for, because you want to ensure like a smooth rollover and success and transitions and situation, which is a whole other
Mhm.
topic. I'm actually still here all these years later because I love it. I'm still loving somebody to do those harder negotiations, because if you do them yourself and then you end up reporting to them, it can be a little bit awkward, and you make conversations that happen during negotiation.
Mhm.
So getting a professional to do that for you also helps make sure that you get the best, sure you have a professional there. And I feel like while we weren't exactly planning to sell in that moment, we had done some smart things. One, care of our housekeeping. So contracts were in order, all of our paperwork. They did come in and do due diligence. Often that's where a company will kind of uncover something, be like, well, you know what? We've seen this, so now we're offering you got everything in order. There's nothing, that's the best way to go. So just make sure your accountants are good, your financial controller, your HR people are all aboard. So we were very good about that, which was excellent. And then finally, a big mentor of ours too, as far as business goes. And he had said a few years earlier, okay, gals, I think, maybe he saw the writing on the wall. Maybe he thought like, okay, these girls are only going to be able to do this for so long, like as for, co-CEOs. And he said, let's set up some holding companies for you folks. So that way, we can put some money in holding companies. And he's like, if we get a big, that way, if you do get a big cash influx, you have somewhere to put it, which is smart for tax purposes, and also setting.
Wow, though that sounds like you got some incredible advice and the support that you needed. I always heard that one of the most
And
important things, yeah, one of the most important things is to have a great lawyer, an accountant, a financial team. So it's really important that you look at the numbers and the legal framework of your structure of your business. So it sounds like you got some amazing advice, and that the company that you sold to, Avery, was not trying to take advantage of you. So that's great. And because sometimes you do hear those stories, unfortunately. And I like that you gave the advice about waiting um, until it's actually a done deal before announcing it because things can go awry at the last minute. So that's really important information. So, what are your thoughts on co-founding a business with friends or family? I mean, obviously, you did do that. What advice do you have for managing those relationships?
Mhm. You've been cutting out on me for that, so I didn't catch all of it. But I'm not sure if I'm cutting out as well, so I'm not sure who's listening. I don't know. I don't know if I'm cutting out as well. I don't think I am. Um, but I just also wanted to say that when you're negotiating for that year and then signed on, but you should be aware around to agree to stay on because some people, like I've got who sold his business and he agreed to stay on from dead in seeing, where his company was going. Because in a lot of ways, it's like your baby as well, right? So make sure if you are staying on, what that transition look like. Understand what your role is going to be. Managing your own expectations because you're kind of used to calling the shots and you might not be calling the shots, right? So if you're very involved operationally, that might look very different. And I think the transition went smoothly for me because I wasn't really very emotionally not like my other partners were. And that would have been, a trickier trend. That's why I'm still here.
Wow. Okay. So since am I still cutting out on you? Think so. You know what? I think maybe what we should do is end this, and what we'll do is re-record on another platform that's more stable. I think there's some issue either on my side or your side today, so I think we're cutting in and out.
Mhm.
So why don't we uh, uh, figure out a way to make this work better? So I'm going to end our stream, and I'm going to see